I spotted the posted notice flapping on my fence at dawn, its red stamp catching the porch light as Karen from 2 doors down claimed my gate violated community harmony. She stood by the mailbox row like she owned the street, saying the board had filed a penalty against me before I even had a chance to breathe. So I pulled the permit binder I'd kept since inspection days. 1 page was all it took to show her story, cracked wide open. "Try me again," I said. Finally, someone fought back. By the time I turn into Cedar Ridge, I know something's off. My garage door is shut. Most evenings I leave it cracked a foot to let oil and sawdust breathe out. Tonight, the white panel is sealed tight. I park at the curb, step out into cool Oregon air, and see the paper slapped dead center on the metal. Noise violation, $60. The black letters shout on a street so quiet I can hear the wind in the pines. Underneath in italics, 1 word sits in quotation marks like somebody's favorite accusation. Noise. I stand there a second with the grocery bag in one hand, keys in the other. No party sounds. Somewhere down the block, a radio leaks low country music. A dog barks once and quits. Behind me, the little gate camera on the stone post gives a soft electronic beep and its red light flips from solid to blink. When I glance over, I catch my neighbor Peter closing his front door a little too fast. Porch light snaps off. "Sure," I murmur. "Nothing to see." I peel the notice off the garage and smooth it flat. The paper smells like toner and attitude. Noise violation, I read. For what? Breathing too loud. Cedar Ridge HOA logo. In the corner, my lot number. Then the part that matters. Failure to remit payment within 10 days may result in administrative lien placed upon property. Straight to the L word, I say. On the first shot. That's efficient, Marjorie. I take out my phone and snap a clear photo framing the words and the time display. Filed 1902. 30 years as a building inspector taught me one thing. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. I climb back into the truck where the reception's better and open my email. At the top of the inbox sits exactly what I expect. Subject noise citation, $60. Time, 6:45 p.m. I open it and read aloud because hearing it makes the nonsense settle in. Dear resident, HOA has received multiple complaints of excessive noise originating from your address at the date and time indicated. In accordance with Cedar Ridge community standards, a fine of $60 has been assessed. I scroll down, looking for a recording, a description of what the noise even was, any detail at all. Nothing. No audio, no specifics, no names, I say. Just multiple complaints falling out of the sky. The steering wheel creaks under my grip. I thumb over to my security app. 3 tiny thumbnails pop up: driveway cam gate, cam garage cam. I drag the timeline to 6:45 p.m. The blue bar slides and drops. Garage first. The video plays. Lights off. Door down. Empty concrete tool bench in the corner pegboard I leveled last weekend. No motion. No sound. "Okay," I mutter. Driveway. At 6:44 p.m., the driveway camera shows bare asphalt. At 6:45, still bare. My truck, according to the dash cam I'll pull later, is sitting behind the feed store. They fined me $60 for a noise I wasn't even home to make, I say louder. In the back of my head, the old professional instinct stirs. Since when does a noise cost $60 and your house? I tap the HOA hotline number at the bottom of the email. It rings twice. Then a woman's recorded voice slides into my ear, smooth and distant. "You've reached Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association. All complaints must be submitted in writing. No voicemails will be returned." The message repeats, then the line dies. That figures, I say. You can threaten a lien without speaking to a soul, but you can't answer a simple question. I step back onto the driveway. The line of mailboxes at the corner glows dull orange under the sodium lamp. The air smells like pine and somebody's grill. Cedar Ridge looks exactly like the brochure promised: clean, quiet, controlled. When I step into the street, the sky over the subdivision has gone from blue to that deep navy that eats the hills. The brightest patch of light is the mailbox cluster under the street lamp. That's where she is. Marjorie Dale stands beside the boxes like she owns the concrete they're bolted into. Cardigan buttoned to the throat. Clipboard hugged tight. HOA badge catching the light. She isn't sorting envelopes. She's looking straight at my place. I walk down the sidewalk, hands loose at my sides, boots scratching the concrete. At this distance, I can see the fine lines at the corners of her mouth, the way they pull tighter the closer I get. "Evening, Marjorie," I say. Her eyes barely flicker. "You're already on record, Mr. Brooks." Her voice is smooth, practice the sound of a board meeting that thinks it's a courtroom. "Don't make this harder." The notice in my pocket feels heavier. The irritation I walked in with hardens into something else. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's the opening move. The second email hits my phone at 7:12 a.m. on the dot, right as I'm tying my boots. Subject: second reminder. Payment pending. They didn't even wait a full day to nag me about $60. I sit on the edge of the bed and open it. It's almost identical to the first, same bold font, same polite threat, same casual mention of administrative lien, like that's just a normal word you use over coffee. "Persistent, aren't you?" I mutter. I swipe past it and pull up last night's photos. The notice on my garage. Filed 19/02. The clean video timeline from the cameras. Empty garage, empty driveway, quiet street. I've spent my life around codes and permits. Things are supposed to line up. Date, time, evidence. This doesn't line up. By 8, I'm in the truck heading toward town. The pines blur past the windshield, their tops lit gold by the low sun. Cedar Ridge recedes in the rearview like a postcard you're not sure you want to send. I swing by the community mailbox cluster on the way out. The bulletin board beside it has a fresh staple pattern in the cork. The top half of a flyer is still there, torn jagged through the middle. All I can read is, "Permits must be..." The rest is gone. Permits must be what I say, filed. Posted, ignored. A breeze catches the paper and flaps the corner like it wants to finish the sentence for me. It doesn't. I snap a photo and keep driving. Millie's place sits where Main Street bends toward the river. Same chipped blue sign it's had for 30 years, same coffee smell leaking out the door. The bell above it jingles as I step inside. The place is half full. Old men in ball caps clustered at the counter arguing about road repairs. A logger with sap still on his boots scrolling his phone in a corner booth. Vinyl seats cracked at the edges. Coffee pots never quite empty. Morning, Caleb Millie calls from behind the counter. "You want your usual strong and bottomless," I say, "and a table where I can see the bulletin board." She snorts. "That HOA of yours riled you up already," something like that. I take the booth next to the wall where local yard sale flyers and lost dog notices live. There's Millie's open mic night sign, the high school's car wash poster, and tucked off to the side a stack of city code pamphlets nobody touches. Howard shuffles in 5 minutes later, ball cap, low windbreaker, zipped to his throat. He sees me and angles over. "You look like a man who slept with his boots on," he says, sliding into the opposite seat without asking. "HOA fined me $60 for noise last night," I answer. "I wasn't even home." He blinks. "Noise. From you. Hell, Caleb. The loudest thing I've ever heard out of your house is that old radio in your garage." That's what I thought. Millie materializes with 2 mugs. "You boys need refills or a lawyer?" she asks. "Refills, for now," I say. "Lawyer might be phase 2. When she moves away, Howard leans in. "You talked to Walt?" "Yet?" I shake my head. "Didn't know I needed to." As if summoned, the door opens and in walks Walt Garner. Same tan jacket he wore when he was still in the clerk's office, same careful way of walking like the floor might hold a secret. He spots us, lifts 2 fingers, and takes a pamphlet off the bulletin board on his way over. "I heard somebody mentioned my name and lawyer in the same breath," he says, sliding into the booth. "That's dangerous talk before 9 a.m. It's HOA talk," I say. "They hit me with a $60 noise fine and a lien threat in the same night." Walt's easy smile thins. "Show me." I hand him my phone. He reads the citation email, slowly, lips moving just enough to track the words. When he gets to multiple complaints, his eyebrows knot. "Did they attach recordings?" he asks. "No. Names, addresses. At least a timestamp, just the fine and the threat." He exhales through his nose. "Noise under city code isn't a feeling, Caleb. It's decibels, duration, and documentation. If they're using noise to justify a fine, they ought to have meter readings or at least a clear incident log." That's what I thought, I say. Garage was quiet. Cameras were quiet. Only thing making noise was my blood pressure. Howard chuckles, then goes quiet when Walt flips the phone to the camera feed I saved. "You still timestamp these to network time?" Walt asks. "Always." He nods. "Good. This shows you weren't home. That matters. He reaches to the side, grabs one of the forgotten pamphlets from the bulletin board, and spreads it on the table. It's a thin printout of Municipal Ordinance's edge, yellowed from sitting there too long. Here, he says, tapping a paragraph with a fingernail. If a homeowners association wants to issue a citation tied to property use, they need a supporting permit compliance record on file. It doesn't matter if it's noise paint color or height of your grass. No record, no legitimate citation. So they should have something signed and dated before they fine me, I say. At least a checklist, Walt replies. Inspection notes. An entry that says someone verified the violation. Otherwise, they're just making it up as they go. Howard shakes his head. They've been getting braver since you moved in, Caleb. Started small. Trash cans, porch lights. Now it's liens over noise. Walt glances at him, then back at me. You still have your inspector's eye, he says. Use it. Pull your logs. Document your timeline. But the real pressure point isn't the fine. No, I ask. He taps the pamphlet again. It's the paper behind the fine. If they issued that without a permit compliance record, that's not just sloppy. That's abuse of authority. The word hangs between us heavier than $60. Abuse? You think they'd fake something like that, I ask. Walt lowers his voice. The diner, noise plates, clinking coffee, pouring low arguments seems to dim around us. I've seen boards remember inspections that never happened, he says. Seen logs created a week after the fact to make ugly decisions look legal. If they faked the complaint log, or if it just appeared after you start asking questions, they're done. City won't like that one bit. Millie drops a fresh pot on our table. More, she asks, eyes flicking over the spread of paper. We're studying, Walt says. Looks like trouble, she replies, pouring anyway. When she leaves, he slides the pamphlet closer to me. The small print swims until I focus on it. Permits, compliance, records retained on site. So, what do, I ask. Walt wraps his hands around his mug, warming his fingers. You don't yell, he says. You don't fire off angry emails. You stay calm. You ask for what they're legally required to have. He leans in. Find the permit book, he says. Every HOA worth the ink on its bylaws keeps one. If it's thin where it should be thick, if pages look fresh where they should be old, you've got them. Howard whistles low. You're really gonna poke that hornet's nest? Caleb. I fold the notice from my pocket and tuck it next to the city code printout. Both edges lined up both sides of the same fight. They already put me on record, I say. All I'm doing now is reading theirs. I send the email at 1:14 p.m. sharp. Subject, pursuant to Civil Code, Sartor 5145, Documentation Inquiry. The cursor blinks at the end of my signature, Caleb Brooks, Lot 27, Cedar Ridge, HOA, like it's waiting to see if I'm serious. I read the body one last time. To the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association Board, pursuant to applicable state civil codes and Cedar Ridge governing documents. I am formally requesting access to the following records for review. 1. Permit compliance records related to Lot 27. 2. Noise complaint logs for the date of yesterday's date. 3. Annual maintenance and inspection records for common areas covering the last 2 years. This request is made as a resident in good standing and is limited to materials the association is required to keep and provide upon request. Straight clean, no insults. I hit send. The little whoosh sound from my laptop feels more satisfying than it should. My home office is a small square over the garage. White LED strips cast a clean light over a battered oak desk. Stacks of old inspection manuals line the wall edges curled from years of coffee and rain. Through the thin floor, I can sense the familiar weight of the tool bench below, like an anchor bolted into the slab. I don't have to wait long. At 1:18 p.m., my mail tab flashes. From president@cedarridgehoa.org. Subject re. Pursuant to Civil Code, Sartor 5145, Documentation Inquiry. I open it. Mr. Brooks Association records are internal administrative materials and are not subject to resident review. Please refer to the community standards for clarification. Regards, Marjorie Dale, President, Cedar Ridge, HOA. 4 minutes. Not enough time to read my request twice, let alone check a statute. I lean back in my chair, feeling the cheap plastic creak. On the wall is a framed certificate from my last year as a city inspector. The embossed seal looks back at me like an old, unimpressed friend. Records are internal, I read aloud, not subject to review. I reach for the Cedar Ridge CCNR binder I pulled from the welcome packet when I moved in. It thumps onto the desk, heavy and slightly warped. I flip through pages until the tabs blur, then slow down around the middle. There it is, Article 9, Records and Inspections. Association shall make available for inspection and copying. Accounting books, records, and minutes, including any documents necessary to determine the validity of charges, fines, or liens assessed against an owner. I tap the line with my finger until the paper rasps under my nail. Not subject to review, I repeat. Unless you read your own rules. The desk lamp hums faintly. Outside, a pine branch scrapes the siding. I pull my laptop closer and open a browser tab to Civil Code 5145. Legal language scrolls down the screen. Access, enforcement, penalties. 3 days. They have 3 business days to respond properly, not 4 minutes to shut me down. My inbox dings again. I expect another canned response, maybe something with more legal-sounding words. Instead, the sender line makes me pause. From Denise. Cedar Ridge, HOA.org. Subject. No subject. I hover for a second, then click. Mr. Brooks. I probably shouldn't be emailing you from this account, so please don't reply here, but I wanted you to know whatever they told you. There is no noise log for last night. There hasn't been a noise log entry for your address in at least a year. Please be careful. They've been talking about using liens more aggressively. Denise. The scroll bar is tiny. That's all there is. I stare at the words until they go a little soft around the edges. Then I take a slow breath and print it. The laser printer on the shelf rattles to life, spitting out the page with a smell like hot dust and toner. No noise log. Not even a pretend one. I pin the paper under my fingers and say it out loud just to hear it once more in the open air. There is no noise log for last night. In my chest, something old and familiar rises, a mix of anger and the precise satisfaction of a puzzle clicking into place. They find me for noise they can't even be bothered to write down. My inbox pings again, harder this time, like the laptop knows this one counts. The new subject line is colder. From president@cedarridgehoa.org. Subject: intention to lien draft. Timestamp: received 1507. Of course she put the word draft in there. People think if they soften the edges it cuts less deep. My hand is steady as I open it. Mr. Brooks. This correspondence is to inform you that due to your failure to remit payment of the assessed noise fine within the specified period, the association is preparing an administrative lien against your property. A formal notice will follow if payment is not received. This is a draft notice for your awareness. Regards, Cedar Ridge, HOA Board. No, dear. No explanation. Just a quiet little threat dressed in business casual. They move fast when it's your house, I say. I set the printed lien draft next to the notice from my garage, then place Denise's email beside them. 3 pieces of paper in a row on the desk, 3 lines of a story they probably hoped I wouldn't read straight. Notice first, no noise, refused records, no log, draft lien, no shame. Down in the garage, a wrench slips from the pegboard and clatters to the concrete, the sound muffled but clear through the floor. For some reason, it makes my jaw set. They're not going to stop on their own. That much is obvious now. I look at the intention to lien draft and let the words settle. Administrative lien. Abuse of authority. No log. Every term I know how to weigh. If they push, I say quietly, I'll bring someone who knows how to push back. The sound of my own voice in the empty office is steady, not loud. They can call that noise if they want. By Thursday morning, the anger had settled into something sharper. I sat at the kitchen table with the lien draft, the original notice, and Denise's email laid out like evidence exhibits. The clock on the stove read 7:43 a.m. My phone lay on top of the stack screen, dark. I picked it up and scrolled until I found the name I needed. Lisa Navarro. I hadn't called her in 2 years, not since she'd left the city attorney's office for private practice. We'd sat in the same cramped conference rooms plenty of times back when my job was making sure buildings didn't fall down and hers was making sure permits meant something. I hit call. She answered on the second ring. Navarro. It's Caleb, I said. Brooks, Cedar Ridge. There was a tiny pause like she was flipping mental files. Inspector Brooks, she said. I thought you retired to drink coffee and yell at football games. I did, I said. Now, my HOA is fining me $60 for noise and threatening a lien with no log. She didn't laugh. Walk me through it. Short version. I made it short. The notice on the garage. The clean camera footage. The emails. Denise's quiet message, there is no noise log. The intention to lien draft. She didn't interrupt. I could hear a faint tapping on her end, like a pen on paper. When I finished, there was a heartbeat of silence, then her voice changed gears. Forward, everything she said. All emails, the photos, the video timestamps, the CCNR section on records. Subject line, Cedar Ridge. I'll handle this. That easy? I asked. Nothing about HOAs is easy, she said. But this part is clear. They can't fine and lien without documentation and then tell you the documentation doesn't belong to you. I sent the packet while she was still on the line. A second later, a faint chime came through her end. Got it, she said. Give me 10 minutes. The call ended. Upstairs, the house was quiet. Down in the garage, the old tool bench waited under the weight of my sockets and levels the life I thought I'd left behind for quieter evenings. Upstairs, on the little desk in the spare room, I called an office, my laptop screen lit up at 7:58. New email. From lisa.navarro@navarrolegal.com. Subject, Cedar Ridge, HOA, records demand draft. She called before I could open it. Read along, she said. I could hear her keyboard through the phone. Each key press sharp, deliberate. Dear Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association Board. Her voice flattened into professional cadence. This firm represents Mr. Caleb Brooks Lot 27, with respect to a citation issued by your association on Tuesday at 6:45 p.m., described as a noise fine, in the amount of $60.60. I scrolled. The words were there exactly as she said them. In connection with that citation and pursuant to applicable civil code sections and your own governing documents, you are hereby formally requested to produce within 48 hours of the citation timestamp the following. 1. Permit compliance records relating to Lot 27. 2. Noise complaint logs for the date of the alleged violation. 3. Maintenance and inspection binders for common areas for the preceding 24 months. Her keys clicked once twice. Failure to produce such records within the specified period will be construed as confirmation that no such documentation exists, and any attempt to pursue fines or liens based thereon will be treated as an abuse of authority. She paused. I could sweeten that language, she said, but I think they'll understand what it means. It's pretty clear, I said. And Caleb, she added, we're not measuring 48 hours from right now. We're measuring from the moment they hit you with that email. Tuesday, 6:45 p.m. That clock is already running. I checked the time in the corner of my screen. 8:06 a.m. Thursday. That gives them less than 11 hours, she finished. Good. I don't like giving bad actors weekends. She sent the final draft as a PDF complete with letterhead and signature. My printer coughed it into existence, page warm in my hand. Now, she said, you're going to take that letter to the post office and send it certified mail. I'll email a copy to their official address, but certified gives us a timestamp they can't wiggle around. You think they'll comply? I asked. I think they'll react, she said. Compliance is optional. Reaction is guaranteed. The Cedar Ridge Post Office was a squat brick building with a flag out front and wood floors that creaked under every step. The smell inside was paper and ink and faint old coffee. A line of retirees wound toward the counter, each holding money orders, care packages, hand-addressed envelopes. Next, the clerk called. She was in her 50s, glasses on a chain name tag that read Jan. I stepped up and slid the envelope across. Certified mail, I said. To Cedar Ridge HOA office. She weighed it, slapped a green and white label on the front, and handed me a pen. Sign here. The pen rasped across the little form. When she stamped it, the machine came down with a heavy thunk that echoed off the high ceiling. That's your proof, she said, sliding the receipt over. Goes out with the 10 o'clock run. I folded the receipt and tucked it carefully into my wallet next to my driver's license. A different kind of ID. On the way out, I stopped by the post office bulletin board. Among the lost dog cards and estate sale flyers, there was a new notice from the city public records, and your right to know. I smiled despite myself. Out in the parking lot, I sat in my truck and snapped a photo of the certified receipt in the envelope before I'd mailed it. Then I opened the HOA app, uploaded the PDF copy of Lisa's letter, and attached the image. Filed 0833. If they wanted everything in writing, they were going to get more writing than they bargained for. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed again. From President at cedarridgehoa.org. Subject re Cedar Ridge, HOA, records demand. Mr. Brooks, the association declines to respond to this request. These issues are internal and will be handled according to our established procedures. Regards, Cedar Ridge HOA Board. No mention of the law, no acknowledgement of deadlines, just the same wall in a fancier frame. I forwarded it to Lisa without comment. Her reply landed a minute later. Good, she wrote. Declining a lawful request is how we win. A second message followed before I could answer. Be ready, Caleb, it said. I'm calling the city next. By Thursday morning, the anger had settled into something sharper. I sat at the kitchen table with the lean draft, the original notice, and Denise's email laid out like evidence exhibits. The clock on the stove read 7:43 a.m. My phone lay on top of the stack screen, dark. I picked it up and scrolled until I found the name I needed. Lisa Navarro. I hadn't called her in 2 years, not since she'd left the city attorney's office for private practice. We'd sat in the same cramped conference rooms plenty of times back when my job was making sure buildings didn't fall down and hers was making sure permits meant something. I hit call. She answered on the second ring. Navarro. It's Caleb, I said. Brooks, Cedar Ridge. There was a tiny pause like she was flipping mental files. Inspector Brooks, she said. I thought you retired to drink coffee and yell at football games. I did? I said. Now, my HOA is fining me $60 for noise and threatening a lien with no log. She didn't laugh. Walk me through it. Short version. I made it short. The notice on the garage, the clean camera footage, the emails, Denise's quiet message there is no noise log, the intention to lie in draft. She didn't interrupt. I could hear a faint tapping on her end like a pen on paper. When I finished, there was a heartbeat of silence, then her voice changed gears. Forward, everything she said. All emails, the photos, the video, timestamps, the CCNR section on records. Subject line, Cedar Ridge. I'll handle this. That easy, I asked. Nothing about HOAs is easy, she said. But this part is clear. They can't fine and lien without documentation and then tell you the documentation doesn't belong to you. I sent the packet while she was still on the line. A second later, a faint chime came through her end. Got it, she said. Give me 10 minutes. The call ended. Upstairs, the house was quiet. Down in the garage, the old tool bench waited under the weight of my sockets and levels the life I thought I'd left behind for quieter evenings. Upstairs, on the little desk in the spare room, I called an office. My laptop screen lit up at 7:58. New email from lisa.navarro@navarrolegal.com. Subject, Cedar Ridge, HOA, records demand, draft. She called before I could open it. Read along, she said. I could hear her keyboard through the phone. Each key press sharp, deliberate. Dear Cedar Ridge, Homeowners Association Board. Her voice flattened into professional cadence. This firm represents Mr. Caleb Brooks Lot 27, with respect to a citation issued by your association on Tuesday at 6:45 p.m., described as a noise fine, in the amount of $60.60. I scrolled. The words were there exactly as she said them. In connection with that citation and pursuant to applicable civil code sections and your own governing documents, you are hereby formally requested to produce within 48 hours of the citation timestamp the following. 1. Permit compliance records relating to Lot 27. 2. Noise complaint logs for the date of the alleged violation. 3. Maintenance and inspection binders for common areas for the preceding 24 months. Her keys clicked once, twice. Failure to produce such records within the specified period will be construed as confirmation that no such documentation exists, and any attempt to pursue fines or liens based thereon will be treated as an abuse of authority. She paused. I could sweeten that language, she said, but I think they'll understand what it means. It's pretty clear, I said. And, Caleb, she added, we're not measuring 48 hours from right now. We're measuring from the moment they hit you with that email. Tuesday, 6:45 p.m. That clock is already running. I checked the time in the corner of my screen. 8:06 a.m. Thursday. That gives them less than 11 hours, she finished. Good. I don't like giving bad actors weekends. She sent the final draft as a PDF complete with letterhead and signature. My printer coughed it into existence, page warm in my hand. Now, she said, you're going to take that letter to the post office and send it certified mail. I'll email a copy to their official address, but certified gives us a timestamp they can't wiggle around. You think they'll comply? I asked. I think they'll react, she said. Compliance is optional. Reaction is guaranteed. The Cedar Ridge post office was a squat brick building with a flag out front and wood floors that creaked under every step. The smell inside was paper and ink and faint old coffee. A line of retirees wound toward the counter, each holding money orders, care packages, hand-addressed envelopes. Next, the clerk called. She was in her 50s, glasses on a chain name tag that read Jan. I stepped up and slid the envelope across. Certified mail, I said. To Cedar Ridge HOA office. She weighed it, slapped a green and white label on the front, and handed me a pen. Sign here. The pen rasped across the little form. When she stamped it, the machine came down with a heavy thunk that echoed off the high ceiling. That's your proof, she said, sliding the receipt over. Goes out with the 10 o'clock run. I folded the receipt and tucked it carefully into my wallet next to my driver's license. A different kind of ID. On the way out, I stopped by the post office bulletin board. Among the lost dog cards and estate sale flyers, there was a new notice from the city public records, and your right to know. I smiled despite myself. Out in the parking lot, I sat in my truck and snapped a photo of the certified receipt in the envelope before I'd mailed it. Then I opened the HOA app, uploaded the PDF copy of Lisa's letter, and attached the image. Filed 0833. If they wanted everything in writing, they were going to get more writing than they bargained for. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed again. From president@cedarridgehoa.org. Subject Cedar Ridge, HOA, records demand. Mr. Brooks, the association declines to respond to this request. These issues are internal and will be handled according to our established procedures. Regards, Cedar Ridge, HOA Board. No mention of the law, no acknowledgement of deadlines, just the same wall in a fancier frame. I forwarded it to Lisa without comment. Her reply landed a minute later. Good, she wrote. Declining a lawful request is how we win. A second message followed before I could answer. Be ready, Caleb, it said. I'm calling the city next. The notice hits my phone late Thursday afternoon. Subject special board meeting permit review. The timing isn't subtle. 47 hours since the noise citation. 13 hours after Lisa's certified letter. 3 hours after the board claimed everything was internal. I text Walt the screenshot. He replies instantly, I'll be there. By the time I reach the clubhouse, clouds have sunk low enough to graze the rooftops. The parking lot is half full. Minivan's a contractor's truck. Marjorie's spotless silver sedan angled across 2 spaces like she owns the pavement. The clubhouse lights burn bright behind the windows. I'm closing the truck door when someone steps from the shadows. Caleb Walt says, tightening the collar of his jacket. Short notice meeting. That means they're nervous. Nervous enough to put permit review in writing, I say. Let's see what that means. Inside the meeting room is washed in cold fluorescent light. One tube in the corner flickers every few seconds, making the room feel like it's breathing. The carpet smells like old coffee and a dozen potlucks. Along the back wall, a faded sticker curls at the corners. Community BBQ, 1998. Rows of chairs face a long folding table. Behind it sits Marjorie Shoulder's tight clipboard placed like a badge. 2 board members sit beside her, whispering as though strategizing for a trial. On the table in front of them rest 3 binders, permit, maintenance, variance. I take a seat near the front. Walt sits beside me. Behind us, a few residents filter in quietly. Howard, the couple from Birch Lane, a woman with her dog leash wrapped around her wrist. Marjorie clears her throat. This special session is now called to order. The purpose is an internal review of association permits. She doesn't make eye contact with me. She also doesn't touch the binders. Walt leans close. Watch how long it takes them to open anything. Stalling means they're hiding gaps. My phone buzzes. Lisa is calling. You're on speaker, I whisper. Good, she says. When they start dancing around the binders, ask them to enter my statement into the minutes. Up front, Marjorie launches into a speech about community record integrity, administrative duty, and volunteer workload. None of it mentions the 48-hour deadline they're about to miss. Her hand stays frozen on top of the permit binder without lifting it. I raise my hand. Marjorie's jaw shifts. Mr. Brooks will allow homeowner comments at the end. This isn't a comment, I say. My attorney has a statement for the record. A ripple moves through the seats. Denise, the HOA secretary, sits off to the side with her notepad, eyes darting between us. A voice flows from my phone level and precise. President Dale. This is attorney Lisa Navarro. Please have the minutes reflect that the permit noise log and maintenance binders fall under statutory homeowner inspection and are not exempt from review. Denise looks at Marjorie. When Marjorie doesn't speak, Denise slowly lifts her pen. There is no basis for withholding these records, Lisa continues. Refusal to comply within 48 hours constitutes non-compliance. Marjorie stiffens. These documents are HOA property. They are not subject to demands from a single resident. Her voice quivers on the last word. Before she can continue, a calm, unfamiliar voice speaks from the doorway. Ma'am, they're not solely under HOA control anymore. The room falls silent. A man in a Navy City windbreaker steps inside holding a tablet. His ID badge swings slightly as he crosses the carpet. I'm Inspector Alvarez Oakridge, Code Enforcement, he says. We received Ms. Navarro's request and supporting material this afternoon. Marjorie stands so quickly her chair skids. This is a private association. You can't just walk in, and Alvarez raises a hand. HOA permits tie directly into municipal code. When questions arise about their validity, the city is obligated to review them. He walks to the table. No hesitation. He studies the stack of binders, then pulls a roll of yellow labels from his pocket. Per city protocol, these records remain on site, but are now under inspection hold. He peels the first label and presses it across the spine of the permit binder inspection hold, City of Oak Ridge. The next label goes on to the maintenance binder, the last onto variance. Each sticker lands with a quiet, decisive sound that seems louder than Marjorie's breathing. Behind me, someone exhales. Walt crosses his arms, satisfied. Alvarez steps back. No pages added, no pages removed, no alterations. My office will coordinate the review. For the first time, Marjorie says nothing. Her face is pale. Her fingers curl around her clipboard like it's a lifeline. The bright yellow labels glow under the humming lights, 3 silent announcements that the game has shifted. And, for the first time in 47 hours, it feels like the noise is finally on their side of the table. Alvarez didn't wait for the board to recover. The moment the clock on the wall ticked to 6:45 p.m., the exact 48-hour mark since the noise citation he reached for the 3 binders on the table. All right, he said, voice steady. These stay with us until review is complete. He stacked permit on top of maintenance, then variance. The thick covers making a soft thud as they settled into his hands. The room watched him like someone watching a crane lift a car. Everyone aware. Something heavy was being moved, something that wasn't coming back in the same shape. Marjorie's voice slipped out barely audible. This isn't how it works. Walt crossed his arms. Howard leaned forward in his chair. Even Denise, who usually shrank into the corners of every meeting, stared openly at the binders in Alvarez's grip. I followed as Alvarez stepped out of the meeting room and into the back hallway of the clubhouse. The air back here was cooler, lit by a long strip of white LED panels that hummed faintly. Stacks of folded tables lined the wall. A cart full of leftover holiday decorations sat under a sheet, its plastic tinsel glinting whenever the lights flickered. Alvarez carried the binders to a waiting evidence box, one of those thick, reinforced cardboard containers the city uses for archived case files. The sound of cardboard brushing against cardboard echoed lightly in the narrow hallway. My phone buzzed. Lisa. I answered and held the phone up. You're on speaker. She didn't waste time. Officer Alvarez. She said, her voice clean and smooth through the line. For the record, please note that seizure of these documents is pursuant to my client's inspection request following a defective citation and a refusal to produce required records. Alvarez looked toward the phone, nodded once. Logged, he said. Permit books are now evidence. The words carried more weight than the binders themselves. Evidence. That meant chain of custody. That meant oversight. That meant everything the HOA wanted to keep buried had just been dragged into daylight. I stepped closer, watching as he positioned each binder neatly inside the evidence box. Permit went in first. Maintenance, next. Variance. Lest its spine still wrapped in a fresh inspection hold sticker, he pressed them down with a practiced hand. "It's barely been 48 hours, I said quietly. All this started with a $60 noise ticket they slapped on my door. Alvarez closed the lid, pushing the flaps down until they locked with a heavy final snap. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a roll of tamper-evident seals, bright red strips with City of Oak Ridge printed in black. He placed the first seal across the lid seam, smoothing it with his thumb. Then a second. Then a third. "City custody from this moment," he said. Behind him, footsteps approached. 2 board members shuffled in pale and wide-eyed. Denise hovered behind them, hands clasped. Marjorie came last, shoulder-stiff clipboard hanging loosely at her side as if she'd forgotten she was holding it. She stared at the sealed box like she didn't recognize it, like she was seeing for the first time what her power actually looked like when someone put rules around it. "This can't be right," she whispered. "Those are internal HOA materials. We always handle them ourselves. You have no idea how much work Alvarez turned toward her, not unkindly but without any room left to maneuver." "Ma'am," he said, "these documents support regulatory compliance. When there's credible evidence the records may be incomplete or altered, the city has an obligation to secure them. That's the law." Her mouth worked, but no words came out. Lisa's voice carried from the phone. "President Dale, you'll receive a written notice from my office and from the city by tomorrow morning. Any attempt to access or alter these records now would constitute interference." Marjorie closed her eyes. For a moment I thought she might argue, might pull rank, might reach for some familiar threat, but instead she took one small, uneven breath. "What have we done?" she murmured. Not loud, not for anyone in particular, just the sound of someone finally understanding the size of the hole they'd been digging. Alvarez lifted the sealed evidence box, cradling it against one arm, and nodded toward the exit. "I'll take it from here," he said. And just like that, almost exactly. 48 hours after a phony noise ticket showed up on my garage door, the HOA's permit records were no longer theirs. They belonged to the city, to the law, to the process they'd assumed no one would ever summon. And for the first time since Tuesday evening, control shifted to my side of the line. The email arrives just after sunrise on Friday. Subject: preliminary findings. Irregularities noted. I open it standing by the kitchen counter, coffee still too hot to drink. The city's letterhead fills the screen, followed by a tight block of text that makes my stomach go still. "Mr. Brooks, preliminary review of the documents obtained from the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association has revealed multiple irregularities, including expired permits for common area structures up to 2 years overdue. Absence of any noise complaint. Log for the date of your citation. Missing maintenance entries for the last reporting period." I read it twice, then a third time. The words feel heavier than the fine ever did. No noise log, 2 years of expired permits, maintenance gaps. I toss on a jacket and step onto the front porch. The air is cool, smelling of wet grass and the faint trace of last night's rain. A single bird chirps from the cedar in my yard, sharp and insistent, like it's trying to wake the entire street. Down the block, a small crowd has formed, 5, maybe 6 neighbors, all facing the same direction. I follow their gaze toward the clubhouse. Even from here, I can see a new sheet of paper taped to the glass door flapping in the morning breeze. Walt appears beside the mailbox row, holding his phone like a piece of evidence. "Morning," he calls. "City sent out the findings." "You read yours." "I read it," I say. Not surprised, but still. Seeing it in writing hits different. He joins me halfway up my walkway. When a binder leaves an HOA's hands, he says nothing. Stays the same. People forget that until the city reminds them. More doors open along the street. Residents step out holding mugs, jackets, half-zipped eyes fixed on the clubhouse like they expect it to start smoking. Howard shuffles across his lawn hat, pulled low. "All this over $60, he mutters as he approaches. That's what people are saying up there. We walk together toward the sidewalk. The cluster of neighbors grows 12, maybe 15 now. Everyone talking in low, sharp voices. 2 years expired, so they never logged the noise complaint. I knew something was off with the maintenance reports. A woman in a blue scrub top stands near the curb, arms folded tight. "I work nights," she says. "If they're cutting corners on permits, that pool fence could have failed months ago." Another man shakes his head, and they're hassling people about mailbox paint. I don't add anything. I just sip my coffee and let them talk. The anger is no longer pointed at me, and I'm in no hurry to claim anything. Walt nudges me. You realize what's happening, right? They're connecting dots, and the board can't hide behind notices anymore. Up ahead, the clubhouse door opens. 3 board members step out, their faces drained. Marjorie follows, clipboard clutched against her chest like she's bracing for impact. She looks smaller in the daylight, her shoulders tight and uneven. The conversations hush, then swell again. One man, tall and broad-shouldered, turns toward the board and raises his voice. "This is unbelievable," he says. 2 years of expired permits. Missing maintenance. And you fine a guy over $60 without a log. People murmur agreement. Marjorie swallows and tries to speak, but nothing comes out. Another voice rises from the crowd, older, deeper, loud enough to echo. The kind of voice that carries in a room without a microphone. Finally, someone fought back, he says. The reaction spreads like a ripple. Surprised looks, nods, a few short claps. I feel heat rise to my face. Not embarrassment exactly, but a strange mix of relief and something quieter. For weeks, I felt like I was pushing a rock uphill alone. Now the hill doesn't look quite so steep. I give a small nod in return. That's all. Marjorie steps back inside the clubhouse, but not before taping a second notice beside the city's preliminary findings. When she moves away, the paper flutters under the weak morning sun. Board restructure. Vote. Monday. Phones come out. Pictures are taken. Someone mutters about time. Birds keep calling from the treetops. Water drips steadily off roof lines. The street feels different, awake in a way it wasn't before. And for the first time since this started, Cedar Ridge isn't quiet at all. The email from the new board arrives just after sunrise on Friday. No bold fonts, no threat lines, no legal jargon curled like a hook at the bottom. Just a clean statement. All improper fines have been refunded. Permit and maintenance systems have been rebuilt in compliance with city and state requirements. I read it twice, then slide it into the folder where I've stored every piece of this mess. The notice. The draft lean Denise's quiet warning. The old noise violation $60 slip sits on top, wrinkled and soft, now almost embarrassed to exist. I fold it once more and drop it behind the others. It's no longer evidence, it's just memory. The community barbecue starts at noon. Someone dusted off the folding tables, someone else dragged out the grills, and for the first time in years, people aren't keeping their distance. Kids chase each other between lawn chairs, their shoes thumping across the grass. Smoke curls up from a row of charcoal grills, carrying the smell of burgers and ribs across the yard. A country song plays low from a speaker near the clubhouse. The bulletin board beside the gazebo has been sanded and repainted. Fresh cork, fresh paint. No passive-aggressive flyers, no threats hidden behind outdated announcements. Just new notices neatly pinned and level. Walt walks up beside me holding a cup of sweet tea. "Feels like the place finally exhaled," he says. "It does." I answer, watching neighbors talk in clusters instead of glancing over their shoulders. "You get your refund yesterday. $60 in, $60 out." He smirks. Interest would have been nice. I'll take the fact those binders walked out in a city evidence box. Feels like interest to me. Walt laughs under his breath and shakes his head as he scans the crowd. You know, folks were scared for a long time. Marjorie ruled with a clipboard and a glare. That's all it took. Sometimes that's all it takes, I say, until someone checks the paperwork. Lisa shows up a few minutes later, trading her courtroom blazer for a denim jacket. She still carries herself like every sentence she speaks could end up in a hearing transcript. "Well," she asks, lifting a paper plate. "Client satisfied." "They closed it clean," I say. She nods once, approving. "Your case was the cleanest I've seen in years. Defective citation. No log refusal to produce records. You practically gift-wrapped it for the city. Is that a compliment? It's the closest you're getting from me in public." A group of residents forms around the new board president as she tacks up a notice on the freshly painted bulletin board. "Penalty log vote," she announces. "All entries tied to undocumented citations will be deleted." Someone in the crowd mutters, "Should have happened years ago." Another, "All this over $60. Hands go up when the vote starts. Nearly unanimous. People who wouldn't have said a word 6 months ago are now speaking openly, even joking about the old regime's obsession with fines. The board president approaches me afterward with an envelope. "For you, Mr. Brooks." Inside is a 1-page letter. Dear Mr. Brooks, the association acknowledges the noise citation issued to your property was improper, unsupported by records, and processed in violation of association policy. We apologize for the inconvenience and distress this caused. No excuses, no defensiveness. Just an apology printed in black and white. I fold it and slip it into the folder next to the original notice, a beginning and an ending side by side. As the sun dips behind the pines, the barbecue winds down. Chairs scrape. Kids collect leftover cookies. Someone tosses a frisbee lazily toward the clubhouse. The air smells like charcoal and cut grass. I drift toward the new bulletin board. The paint is still bright, untouched by weather or resentment. Fresh flyers flutter lightly in the breeze, a yard sale, a community cleanup day, a fall, chili cook-off. Normal things. Ordinary things. Walt steps beside me again. 48 hours, he says quietly, almost to himself. That's all it took to pull the whole thread. 48 hours, I echo. Plus a lawyer with fast typing. And a guy who didn't back down, he adds. I look at the board at the grills, cooling down at neighbors who finally look like neighbors again, not tenants in someone else's kingdom. Finally, someone fought back, a man says behind us. I don't turn to see who. It doesn't matter. The words hang in the warm air like a small flag planted in soft ground. This time, I let myself agree out loud, soft, steady enough to make it real. Finally, I say, the posted order on the clubhouse board fluttered in the evening breeze. The city seal stamped across it like a final weight, and I slipped the old noise notice into my folder. Now, nothing more than a pressed reminder of how fast things can turn. People gathered around the new board as they read the findings aloud, their voices steady, not angry, just relieved. Justice isn't loud. It's steady. What mattered wasn't the $60, but the simple truth that rules only work when someone is willing to check them, and a community only heals when it finally sees where the cracks were. As the lights came on along the gate, I told a neighbor, share your story, someone else might need it.